Ridicula, Spanish for a ridiculous, preposterous, extremely silly, foolish, absurd, or laughable woman. Yup, that was me for the longest time. Except it kind of wasn't. I was certainly made to feel that way, though. And with the highly ridiculous life I've lived up until now, some would say it's kind of fitting. And a lot of people did. Because when you're wired to feel deeply in a world that worships the superficial, you start to believe your sensitivity is insanity. As a woman with a heart too big, a mouth too honest, and a life so chaotic, it could be scripted by God's tipsy intern themselves. Spoiler alert, I'm not your typical self help story. And I never planned on being knee deep in healing, waiting around in shit, thinking I was at the mud bath in the day spa. And I certainly didn't plan on becoming an accidental expert in the field either. Be for real, I'm just an 80s born kid from Canberra with Latino parents trying to get through life, avoiding too much emotional damage. But apparently, God had other plans. It's funny. I've lived a life so wild, so breathtakingly beautiful and bizarre that sometimes I wonder how I'm still here to tell it. I've been through enough plot twists to fill a 20-year-long TV series, and maybe one day I will. But for now, how about we just start with the truth? There's nothing on this earth feared more than a wounded heart. And I know because I spent decades hiding from mine, ducking, dodging, and running from the pain I knew was there, but was nowhere near ready to face. It was nothing short of savage. I numbed it, fed it, laughed over it, and turned it into comedy. I did anything but feel it. But here's the thing about our wounds. They wait patiently until you're ready to stop running, hiding, distracting, overindulging, or vicing as a means of avoidance. Ever since I was little, I knew I was different. I felt things deeply, saw things others couldn't, spoke the language of energy before Spanish and English, or even knowing what energy was. I was this loud, over-imaginative kid living with her head in the clouds who loved everyone indiscriminately, even the ones who didn't quite love me back. Teachers called me off with the fairies. Classmates called me weird. I just called it Tuesday. I oozed unfiltered, honest authenticity, never censoring myself and always wearing my heart on my sleeve. With my heart wide open, I had no other setting. I certainly wasn't regular, that's for sure. And as I grew up, I became acutely aware that blending in was a luxury I would never be afforded. But being rare had a cost. My light made some people uncomfortable. My presence was irritating to the unhealed. Even surrounded by people, I always felt alone, misunderstood, an outsider in spaces that should have felt like home. Over time, I was repeatedly shown that who I was, how I looked, behaved, and existed was simply way too much for the world around me. My mere presence, so unpalatable, I learned to shrink myself, to stay small, minuscule even. Because here's what they don't tell you. Dimming your light doesn't protect you from pain. It just disconnects you from who you are. By the time I reached adulthood, I'd become the emotional landfill for other people's pain. So used to carrying their unspoken wounds that I confused caretaking with love. I absorbed cruelty as normal, saw chaos as connection, and carried burdens that were never mine to bear. In trying to soothe others, I ended up abandoning myself. Gradually, my worth became tangled in other people's dysfunctions until one day I realized I believed I wasn't worthy of anything good at all. Overwhelmed by empathy and starving for peace, I fed my pain, instead trying to fill an emptiness that only self-love could heal. I also became a master escape artist, mistaking avoidance for survival and destruction for control. My life turned into a tragic comedy of mayhem and pain, a never-ending loop of running from what lived inside me. In my desperate attempts to numb the ache, impulsivity became my undoing, leaving a trail of near fatal lessons disguised as bad luck. I spent years drowning in invisible wounds, wondering why I seemed to magnetize misfortune. And my biggest naivety was believing everyone's heart mirrored mine, with innate kindness, purity, and benevolent intentions. My blind compassion ended up becoming self betrayal. My relentless optimism and refusal to give up on people taught me the hardest truth of all. Not everyone is deserving of my kindness, and not everyone is meant to receive my help, especially when I was the one always left paying the price. In addition, bearing the gifts of an oracle has never been the effortless blessing people imagine. At times, it has pained me as much as a bloody good horror film. Born into a wake, I was denied the mercy of ignorance, able to see beyond the veil long before I even understood the world I'd been born into. Understanding spiritual law and the afterlife from a young age left me little choice but to face the harsh reality that this lifetime was never going to be a walk in the park for me. And despite the innate knowing that comes with sight, I often questioned my own existence. But eventually, being of service became as natural as breathing, just like helping others to heal became my default setting. As an oracle, I became known for my truth bombs and messages from beyond, delivering comfort wrapped in uncanny accuracy and often unexpected laughter. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that even the dead don't lose their sense of humour. Yet, for all I had seen and predicted for others, I somehow couldn't stop the carnage in my own life for what seemed like decades on end. Instead, I became a willing participant in the slaughter circus as its number one psychic comedian clown. I wish I could recount my healing journey as dignified and graceful, supported by crystals and incense and soul journaling and blissful meditation. But it was anything but. It was messy, insufferable, and at times pitch black darkness, looking more like crying on the bathroom floor, swearing at God, the angels, and my guides, and still getting up the next day to try again. Life showed me the exit sign one too many times, and every single time the universe slammed the door in my face with pure ferocity until I finally understood that I wasn't meant to be swallowed by my suffering and that abandoning myself was never going to be the answer. Healing demanded more courage than I ever thought I had. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's for those brave enough to face the unbearable, sit with the truth, and back themselves so fiercely that there is no option left but to keep showing up every single day through it all. I owe everything I've become to the bravery it took to meet, accept, and celebrate every fractured, beautiful, and resilient piece of myself. My story isn't all doom and gloom, though. Yes, it has been ridiculous at times, hilarious at others, and sometimes frightening as hell. I've faced heartbreak, trauma, illness, and betrayal on repeat, and somehow still managed to laugh through the tears. And maybe that's what real healing is, not escaping the storm, but singing barefoot in the rain. Today I stand here, scars, stories, spirit, and all, with one simple promise to never abandon myself again. These are my stories, the raw ones, the wild ones, the ones that might make you laugh, cry, or whisper, holy shit, same. Grab a tea, run a bath, or do whatever, because healing the ridiculous starts